composing gloves here, and this is part 2. We're going to go over all the basic parts of Komplete. There are 4 sections. There's the sample section, which is like contact-based things. There is the reactor section. I group reactor into its own universe because it is its own universe. You'll see what I mean shortly. The sample section part 2, and this is like sample packs. We're going to pretty much be ignoring that section. It does exist and it's very great content, but it's also extremely straightforward. It's samples. So hopefully you've got a handle on that. And finally, there's the VST section. This is stuff like massive, absinthe, the reverbs that come with it, the compressors, those sorts of things. So let's jump into it. All right, so I'm going to go a little bit quick and just give you a general idea of what things are, and then we'll dive into the things separately in their own videos because each product is really intense. There's a lot of products. I'm not even going to cover all of them here. I just want to show you some of the things that you now have. You probably already know, but I just want to show you some of my favorites, what I like out of them, and also just some brief setting up tips. I'm using FL Studio. You can use anything. It really doesn't matter. In a couple cases, it does a little, but I'll make those explicit. So let's start with Kontakt. So I built Kontakt right into my template because I use it that much. Kontakt, you have your sample library content here. If the people who made the library bought a license with Kontakt, you register with native access and it will show up in this tab after you've done so and installed the library. So in here, you could find your libraries. There's a couple ones I really like that you should check out. They're the Giant, and let's just go to that. So here's the Giant. I really like this one. On any instrument, you load it up and you click down and you'll see all the files in here. And it's as simple as that. And they added this search tab with Konttakt 6, which I really like. You could also drag down. If you have stuff missing, there are ways to resolve it. I'm not going to cover troubleshooting here. That I just move drives around. That's why it's like that. So anyways, you could load up an instrument like so. We'll look at another browsing case here in just a second. And I really like this piano. Let me go up an octave or 2. And on a lot of Kontakt instruments, they will have snapshots, which you get to by clicking this camera icon. And in here, you see no snapshot. It's basically just a preset for the library. That's like Giant Pop, la 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 la. And they have one here, like, what is it? It's emotional. Now, what I really like about these libraries in particular is their memory footprint is extremely small. Let's talk about a couple things that you might have a problem with. If you load up an instrument, you notice it's taking a while to load. You want to click here on this setting, the cog, and in the memory tab, oh, it's already on the memory tab. This is how much of each sample it needs to load. So a Kontakt instrument, what it is, if we click on this, okay, close this, make it happy. If you click on the cog icon and go to the mapping editor, it's just a bunch of samples that have been recorded. And there are a bunch of groups that this happens in. As you can see, there's a ton of groups. And we're not going to go into the details. You can build your own instruments. But basically, when you load an instrument, it's got to load all those samples. And so how much it decides to load before you can like mess with it is determined by this here. So if you have it really, really, really low, it'll load super fast, but you'll get clicks and pops because when you push a note, it says, oh, we got to load this sample, but it doesn't have very much of that sample already loaded. And so it clicks while it tries to load and then it will load in. This is also, you get into like things like purging samples, which is to remove samples you're not using to save on resources for your computer. This is like stuff that you could get into if you really want to get intense. But all I'm saying is 60s where I've got it set. It's going to depend on your computer. Worth checking out. Also, if it's loading really slow and you know it shouldn't be loading really slow, then that means that it may have some weird thing in it. It may have a hard time finding the right files. And so what you can do is I would close it out, open Kontakt as a standalone, and then come into the save and do a batch resave on the instrument. So you open the instrument up, you hit batch resave. It's going to reindex all the files and things and basically organize its household so that it knows where the heck everything is. This has helped a lot with third-party instruments where it just wouldn't load. I could figure out why. It was with 8DO. It's some 8DO instruments. And I guess if they're saved on Mac but not optimized for PC, it can cause some of these things. So a batch resave though, and they were loading like that. So something to be aware of. So that's the giant. The second piano I really like is called the Grander. It's this one right here. Love it. There's a bunch of pianos in here. People often talk about Alicia's keys. It's very popular piano-wise too. But these are my two. I love them. If you have Keyscape, that's like super great. But as far as Kontakt goes, I still grab these a lot just out of habit. I'm just really used to them. You get a bunch of drum kits with it. I really like the 70s drum kit because of how dry the sound is. Studio Drummer is also great too. But I find myself going to the 70s kit an awful lot. Really like that one. And there's one in here called Cuba. Now, Cuba is really great. They have some wonderful things in here. But the one I really like, if you go up, okay, so this is a more intense browsing experience here. So if it comes with a bunch of instruments, you have to like go through their folders. Not too crazy, right? But some of these things, like, let me show you real quick. The factory library, there's a lot of great instruments in here, but you could get very easily lost. There's a lot of folders. They have a choir, a band, all these things. And I really like the Celestia. If we open it up and go to orchestral percussion, where is it? Sometimes there's like 3 percussion folders in here. It could be a bit tricky to get. So let's go to orchestral. Let's go to legacy. It should have percussion, mallets and bells. Here we go. We got Celestia, Glockenspiel. And this is the legacy stuff. If we go into the more recent stuff, keyboard instruments, no, that's not what we want. See, I can't even, this is just too intense for me right now. Usually, yeah, here we go. If you leave the folder open, that's the folder it goes back to, and I'm often on this one. They added an interface in the thing, so it's been updated. There is a quick load menu, so if you right click on the background, brings up the quick load. You can right click and add a folder, and you right click anywhere to get rid of it, as long as it's not like on a button or something that would trigger some other command. And you can actually go in bells and I can say, hey, you know, I'm going to drag this in here. There it is. So next time I load up Kontakt, this is going to load up as well. Let me click away. There we go. So pretty handy dandy thing. If you're missing a window, maybe you should have started with this. They have a panel up here. You could select what's up here. So there's your panel. You can see what's going on. Let me show you Cuba real fast. So Cuba is another great library you have now. And if we come in here and go to melodic instruments, I really like their bass. Oh my goodness, that's extremely loud. We could turn it down here. Now, all the instruments in here, they are, each one's like its own VST. They're basically hyper intense presets, like super realistic, mega intensely made presets. That's how I kind of view them. But if I bring up the keyboard, you see they're different colors. That's because these colors correspond to different things connected in the instrument. So these are the notes. Typically blue is play notes and red is key switches. In this case, I believe it's patterns. So you see they've got MIDI files also loaded with the instrument, and then you could trigger them here and hear what it's going to sound like. So very, very built out instrument. I'm not going to talk about instrument building in this video, but if you want a channel that has a lot of that kind of stuff, if you're into that, check out David Healy's channel. It talks all about that stuff. Let me show you another example with sort of more use of the keyboard colors. So here's a bit more use of the colors that correspond to various parts of the instrument. You can see also a nice little key for us. My headphones are super loud. So there you have it. There's some instruments. All the instruments that come with it are pretty dang awesome. Still messing with some of the other stuff. Session Strings Pro 2, in the symphonic stuff, it's okay. You can make cool music with it. Like, don't get me wrong, but it's certainly not the best out there. So if you're going to be making something you really want at the top of the game, I can highly recommend Spitfire stuff. It is expensive and it rarely goes on any kind of a sale. Every now and then, like 10%, 20% if they're getting crazy. And I kind of like that because it keeps the value of the products very high. But there's symphonic stuff. Like, let's load up the clarinet. It's just amazing, man. It's so good. We have like staccato. I could recommend the symphonic brass as well. I don't know about the strings, but I've never bought a Spitfire instrument and been like disappointed. It's always amazing. They are more expensive, but they're worth it. With more expensive libraries, you get things like miking positions and various mic positions. So like I could get a very close sound, turn up the close mic. Or I could turn on the ambient mic. I'm not sure if that's A, if it stands for something else, but basically we have like a tree mic T. But very, very cool. Extreme control. The legatos patches are downright phenomenal. So I can recommend those. And let me show you another way to browse. So, okay, let's say you've got a third-party instrument. It was a free one, right? There's a lot of really great free ones. Spitfire themselves have a bunch of free ones. And let's say that, oh, I want to load that. How do you get to that? Well, you could drag the files into here. Now, these are called .nki files. Those are the ones you're going to need. But you could also go to Files, and you see I'm already in the folder with all my stuff. That's because it remembers where I was. You can also have a quick jump spot. I'm always screwing this up, though, and I end up rebrowsing. So I recommend you put this in an easy-to-find spot. And you can browse it through here. So you just go to the folder, like here I am in the folder. I click on Instruments, and you see this is the instrument. It shows it down here. Let's go to another one just to sort of show you. Let's say I want to get the Silk Piano. I click it. Silk Piano NKI. If I needed another one, I could click these. Like, let's say I want to go into data for whatever reason. You just click it. It opens it up. No files that I'm allowed to open here, so it doesn't show up. But Silk Piano, I can double click. I can also click and drag a bit slower. You'll notice that typically, and you can see the memory load too. So this is the whole, what I showed you before with the memory footprint. That will change this. And there's also settings in the instrument. If you go into the tab, we have a DFD, direct from disk. There's like different loading mechanisms if you want to get like really intense. Some libraries you should go in and change it because whoever made it did something weird there. But anyways, if we load it again, we can like click drag and you see it loaded and way faster. That's just because Kontakt now knows where to go to get the samples. So first libraries might load slow sometimes. We'll talk about loading multiple instances here in a sec. There's one more browsing method. And I'm just sharing all these because I know how frustrating it can be if you don't know how to open your own instruments. So a lot of people, Kontakt can open and close pretty slow. It's gotten way fast. Like that's like light speed compared to what it used to be. Like I have tons of videos showing Kontakt taking like a full 15 to 30 seconds to open with nothing in it. And it's because of how it used to treat the libraries, but they've updated it. It's amazing now. But you can get to it by going into your files here. So let's say I want to get to them here. You can come in, we could go to, now ideally you put all the stuff on that external drive. So it's on an easy to reach spot. So I have Kontakt Instruments, which is for me, the name for third-party stuff. I have NI libraries for all the native instrument stuff so that when Native Instruments wants to update, all their stuff's in that folder. So you can just point it at that folder. It doesn't screw with any of my other stuff. 8Dio is one that their instruments are phenomenal. They're always going on sale. Like always, you're going to feel a little cheated if you buy it full price. The instruments are worth full price, but they're like not because of how often they go on sale. So if you're a little patient, trust me, a decent sale will come your way. Get on their email list too. They have tons of just enormous sales that if you're on the email list, you'll get those. And if you buy enough of their instruments, you actually get like additional offers. So they're a really cool company if you're big into the discount thing. Some people have mixed feelings about doing things that way where you charge a lot, but then you discount kind of heavily. But I think it's a good business strategy if you're wise to it. Coming down here, let's go to, I have my instruments in here. Let's see, gloves. Here we go, composing gloves. Don't know why it took me so long to see that. So I've made a bunch of instruments. Some have a lot of coding. Some are literally just pieces. Let me show you one. This is the gloves music box. Now I don't double click the NKI file. See Kontakt NKI file because it will open it in the standalone. Now I want to open it in my DAW, so I could just drag it on and it'll do it. So a lot of people prefer to browse that way. A lot of it was because if you closed Konttakt, it would take forever to open. So you would do everything in your power to not close it. But anyways, here's an instrument. I made this instrument from scratch. My recordings, the music box is somewhere around here. It was a little box I sampled with 2 mics, got some faders. I have free instruments on my website too. I don't remember if this is one of them. But if we come down, you see I have key switches. I want to talk about key switches real fast because you'll see these in a lot of instruments. The clarinet had them. Key switches are switches that change the recording. Like if I had a clarinet, there'd be like a button I'd push that would make it staccato and another button I'd push to make it legato. So in this case, if I click the first one, we get one pluck type. If I click the next one, we get another, and the third one, I get another, yet another. And then I can mix the 2 mic positions. And so on and so forth. Now, the reason this could be a pain, I'm going to grab a different instrument because I think it's a bit better of an example. Just one that's got key switches is like a main feature. So here's an oboe. And let's say I want to write with this oboe. I say, okay, I go to my Kontakt. If you're on like Pro Tools or Studio One, you just load this as an instrument insert. And then, you're right on the channel with a MIDI clip. And so let's just say you've loaded it like that. You loaded one instance of Kontakt, one instrument. It goes to one track in the mixer. It's all really straightforward right now. So in here, I would load an instrument and put it on, have some notes. Let's say I want these notes to be like this. And let's say I want C. You know what? Instead, let's do something even simpler. Okay, here's a bunch of perfect fifths, or fourths, I mean. And let's say, okay, I want these to be different as I go through. I want them to start out legato. Well, let's make them this one. So I need to find this note down here on the bottom. So what I'm going to just make this a little bit more visible. And I got to go even lower. This note. Okay, so this is the note that triggers these. This is the key switch. You see it? So that's the key switch. So that'll set the notes to play that articulation. Now if I want staccato, let's say I wanted to switch to staccato here. I gotta go down one. Okay, so this is the staccato notes. So I put a staccato in. So that's how it works. This is a pain. This is one of the cases where this is a difference with your DAW. FL Studio has a fantastic way to do this. I'm just going to show you real quick. Basically, you don't need any of that garbage. I'm going to come in and I'm going to do something different. You will be able to do this part in your DAW. I'll explain that in a sec. But I'm going to go over to my Kontakt. I have a preset with oboes already on it. I don't know which one I'm using. Probably that one. And let's say these first ones, I want them to be legato or just sustained, long. So I select long and I make them that color and boom, it now plays them long. And let's say I want these next ones to be staccato. Well, okay, I just make them staccato. I mean, that's pretty dang amazing fast. None of this weird clunky stuff. I don't even need to go back in and look at the names of what things are. Like, oh, which one am I doing? It's named there for me. And you hit Alt-C, by the way, if you're an FL user. Select your notes, hit Alt-C. It'll change the color of the note. That's amazing. I'm using a plugin called BRSO. It's the Blake Robinson Synthetic Orchestra. Makes amazing music. You should check it out. But he also is a programmer. He actually works for Spitfire. Guy is just a rock star, so check it out. But this is a thing that lets you output notes. You can even do things that are impossible with key switches. Like key switches, I would never be able to tell it to play 2 articulations at the same time. I'd have to load up a second instrument and tell it to do things separately. Well, here I could take these and I say, you know what? I want these ones to be flutter. And you can hear underneath, let's make these like much louder just so you can hear them. And we'll make these ones softer. That's just straight up impossible in most other situations. So this is a strong reason why a lot of people who use Kontakt heavily I want to use FL if they do use FL. Like if there's a reason why, this is it. This is like an amazing workflow enhancement. I'm still waiting on Studio One to freaking put it in. It's been requested enough times. I don't know how hard it is to implement, but man, I am holding out hopes. So anyways, okay, so that's stuff, that's key switches. That's the basics of working with instruments. For the most part, you just load them and use them as a preset machine. There's this bigger aspect of building. A lot of people say, oh, I want to take advantage of Konttakt more. And then they open up the back engine to go look at stuff. And I've realized that's just that you're never going to open up the back engine unless you really want to build, or you're going to do some very experimental sound design. It's very easy to build, but that's Konttakt in a nutshell. Let's talk about loading up multiple instruments. So there's a couple ways you could do this, okay? You can load up a Konttakt with a library on each individual track. It's easier track-wise because you know it's going to the mixer 1, 2, 3, 4, and everything's all set up. So that's great, but you're loading a bunch of contacts. And in my experience, it's not super great for your CPU. It's totally doable for most people though. What I do is I have one Konttakt. You see there's one Konttakt, and then all of these like little zipped things are MIDI plugins, MIDI sense. Your DAW should have these. In FL Studio, they also have a MIDI out plugin. I'm using the BRSO for the reasons I showed you. They even have the articulations you can set up. You do have to make your own presets, so it's a little bit of a bummer. In like Studio One or Pro Tools, you just open up a MIDI track. MIDI track, boom, you're ready to rock and roll. So what I like to do instead is I load up an instrument. Like let's just load up an instrument here. Here's an instrument. Here's a Session Strings Pro. By the way, I like Session Strings 1 a lot more. Well, I just haven't used Session Strings Pro 2 a lot, but Session Strings Pro 1 is one that also I meant to talk about. Check out the Animator tab. They've got some really cool things. The guitars are also really cool. But we'll load up one of these. And what the heck, we'll load up like a third-party thing too. My Konttakt just froze. Did I make it mad? Oh no. Okay, so sometimes it's just looking for memory. We see the memory was active. We're gonna hold out hopes because I actually have made usually it sorts itself out. So I try not to piss it off further. There it goes. There you have it. See, so that does not necessarily mean death. In the case of Konttakt, I've noticed that. So we open it up. We're back here. Let's go ahead and open up. Let's go for an 8DO instrument this time. And you're saying, wow, you have a lot of instruments. I've owned Konttakt for a while and I've been through a lot of sales. Okay. I am not like rich. This makes me look rich though. So I guess, I don't know if that's good or bad. So there's an 8DO instrument loaded up. You can shrink instruments by like with these logo icons to save space. So once you're done working with them, you can shrink them. You can shrink them further by clicking this like minus icon here, but I don't use that often. I usually go up to 2 contacts. I still would rather have them like this usually. And the reason is it makes it really easy to see this information. So on the info tab, you see the output and the MIDI channel. Now on your DAW, this is going to depend on DAW, and there's a couple different paradigms. FL is a little unique. So MIDI channels work over a port. So you need to make sure that your MIDI channel is talking over that port. So in FL Studio, I make sure I'm on, so this is on input port 1. That means that Konttakt wants to take in MIDI on port 1. That's all it means. And then on that port, there's all these channels. So it's going to say, so here I have a MIDI send plugin. If you're in Pro Tools, all you would do is you'd load an instance of Konttakt and then you'd have MIDI tracks. You would load some MIDI tracks or Studio One. That's what you would do. And then you would change, the channel of the track or whatever. It varies from DAW to DAW. It's a similar story though. And so I'm on port 1 and it's on channel 1. So this sends data out and it goes into Konttakt. And so this will control the first instrument. If I play notes on this channel, you see only the alto sax, the first instrument, gets triggered. If I want to trigger the next instrument, I could either change the channel here. And we see, okay, look here. We see it's receiving notes, but I might just be playing too high. If you want to see on the keyboard the valid range of notes, because that's something I want to do a lot, click on it like in a corner. You got to get this orange outline, which I'm all for the orange. We can see the keyboard updates to whatever we're doing. Make sure you're talking over the right channel still. And there you go. That's what's up there. So you could change this number, or you can open up a new one. This would be like you go on to the next track and the next track. So that's how you talk to multiple things in one instance. We notice the numbers iterate when we load them, but there is another layer. There are these outputs here. So you see how they have output 1, output 2, output 3, and these don't update. The reason why I believe is because of multis. We're not even going to talk about that, but that's my theory. I don't even know if it's right. Basically, they don't update. That's a problem for us. We want them to. So you got to come in here and tell it to. There's a lot of reasons actually why this might not auto update, but I really wish there was a setting that would. So, okay, what this does is it makes it so that they go out over different stereo outputs so that you could get them to mix in your mixer, right? Let's say you want to mix these things, you want to add effects to these things. Well, that's how you change them, but there's more you got to set up. This is why I have it as a template. This is just a lot to set up. If you go to your panel, there's an output section. Check out your output section, open it up, check it out. I don't know if yours looks like mine, but I have Kontakt 6 open, and I've got this down here. And so what I did was I added all of these channels. You can save your configuration once you're done, but I added 16. I noticed if you go over 16, things tend to stop working. So I stopped at 16 and I work in sets of 16. That's me. If you can go higher, that's great. For whatever reason, I run into issues past that. So 16, I've named them and set their outputs accordingly inside of Kontakt. This is still Kontakt stuff. 2 channels, blah, 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 blah. You could do cool stuff with surround, I guess, or whatever, but I've only ever used it for stereo. And if you want to add outputs, you click this plus icon, you're allowed to add channels. Once you have all your channels set up for every instruments you want to run, I do recommend setting this up as a template. Save you a lot of time. You need to go into however your DAW deals with this. So I'm just going to explain the FL version. You go into the cog, go to processing. Every plugin should have this. And you go to auto map outputs. This maps it to the mixer. So now you see these that were labeled in the outputs. They are now going to be routed straight to the mixer. So now when I open up my mixer, and here it is, Kontakt is on channel 37, and the first one will be offset 1 channel. If it wasn't listed as a channel output, then it would just go out the same channel Kontakt's on, but I have listed it 1, so it's going to be moved over 1, if that makes sense. So you see it's playing out. If we go to the next one, oh, I changed the channel on the first one. Let's hear the first one. Got to play higher notes because it's the oboe or saxophone or whatever. So you see it's on the first channel. So I was wrong about the being offset thing. It plays out the first channel. It's just a number thing. There's our next channel, so on and so forth. Now I can add effects to them individually, mix them individually. I could come into here, change the mics or whatever individually. Lots of power. I almost never have this open because I don't need to see it. But it's one of those things you set up. You can get fancier. There's like batch processing options that I sometimes take advantage of. If you have like a unusual setup, like instruments that need to go on the same track or whatever, you may end up in that situation. You can actually come in here and they have a bunch of batch functions like splitting instruments and whatnot. And I occasionally take advantage of that where it'll generate an output section for you. But for the most part, I run out this generic one. And then I rename stuff in the mixer as needed. So that's a lot of setup stuff, but Kontakt is extremely fast to work with. After you have it set up, you just load instruments, you've got your channels already, and you just start writing like immediately. So that's Kontakt. It's a lot of information, I know. One other thing I want to point out, if your DAW supports variable buffer size, which FL Studios does, you could run into weird sample distortion issues because of this. Kontakt very much likes a fixed buffer size for its memory. And so you come into the cog, go to the processing tab, make sure used fixed buffer size is on. And also another thing that caused me massive headaches for ages was when I would render my projects, sometimes samples would fail to load and whatnot, like it was still loading memory. There is an option in settings, or where is it? I know it's in here. Oh, there it is. Notify about rendering mode. Make sure that's on too. This just tells Konttakt, hey, we're about to render. Make sure you got all your friggin' memory loaded, because it stinks when you hear your song after you just waited for it to export, and then it has all these weird sample clicks and pops. Some nodes don't even play. That can be fixed by this. This was a life-changing setting for me, because I probably went like 2 years without knowing about this friggin' button. So you're gonna want to know about that. And yeah, now in the past, I don't know if this is true anymore or not. There used to be like a bunch of different contacts that you would like, different versions. Like there'd be Kontakt 16 out, regular just Kontakt this out. And they would correspond to how many outputs Kontakt could do. But in Kontakt 6, there's only Kontakt 6. So I'm going to go ahead on a limb and just say, just use that one. I didn't see any of the others. So I think they did away with that. So anyways, that's Kontakt. Ton of information. Now we're going to move on to Reaktor, which is arguably worse as far as how much information there is. So Reaktor 6 is a freaking insane. It's such a big plugin. They have to split it into 3 parts. So let's start with the most basic one. Reaktor 6 can be a bunch of things. It can load synths and effects other people have built. So you can load this as a generator, as like a synthesizer, or you can load this in your mixer as an effect. And they have a bunch of great stuff. This section of Reaktor is called play. So if we click on the play, oh my goodness. Go away. Okay, so you've already seen the craziness that can come out of this, okay? I'll explain what I just did there. I guess that was the last thing I had loaded. So there's noise-making machines. Let me show you a synth. This is one. So in Reaktor, they get different names. They're called ensembles. And right now, since I'm in my DAW, the interface resizes to the ensemble that you load. I find this extremely annoying sometimes, because you can see like my browser over here is all weirdly spaced. But you want to have your browser open. This has never disappeared on me, but I would look for like a view file tab, or the panels looks like is what it would be. No, that's the panel set for editing instruments. So view, look in here, see show browser, make sure that's on. You have your user stuff, which is where you could put other things. But basically you're going to go into the NI stuff, and like this is Monarch. Someone made this in Reaktor. If you click on edit, give it a sec, there it goes. You can resize things to your heart's content. So if you're having a hard time with how it's sized, you can just click edit and do that. That's a hot tip. So if we play some of this, oh, I disabled the outputs, didn't I? If we go to Monarch, no, the outputs are hooked up. Why can I not hear you right now? What did I do to make you angry? All right, I could not figure it out. I'm going to just load it again. Let's see if I run into the same thing. Monarch's mad at me. I have no idea why. What the heck did I do to you? There it goes. Okay, I have no idea what was wrong. If you know what was wrong, let me know, because I do not want to do that again. Whatever the heck. That's the first time that's ever happened to me. But okay, this is a Minimoog emulator. It's amazing. Or I don't know. I guess they don't say that. They don't want anything to do against copyright problems or something. But all right, so this is one of the synths I really like. They're modeling a particular other synth, and it is very, very good. Really enjoy it. You can load it up as an instrument, and very much so just use it as a synthesizer. You can also go to the mixer. We can load up Reaktor here. Got to give it a sec to look at my plugin database. Always, the first time always takes a split second. Or a couple split seconds, like 4 or 5 split seconds. There we go. Okay. Yeah, when other DAWs, I do not like their browsing because, like, look, now it opens quick, okay? Just to prove it, just the first time. Okay, so we load this up, and we have in here some other ones like molecular. You just double click, it'll replace whatever's there. And now, where did I load this? On the master? So this is on the master, so we're going to send Monarch in there. And here we go. Go through some presets here. That is just this part changing. That's not even... So they've got some really amazing effects. You should have all these ensembles. Some of my favorites, Molecular is really cool. Monarch's really cool. Razor, very popular as well. I've used Razor on some tracks. I have one called the Fat Man that a lot of people really liked, even though it was like this weird drum and bass kind of half thing. But awesome synthesizer in here. So people will build out like full synths in here. This is a, I can't demo this right now, at least not simply. This is a vocoder. I use this on a lot of things as well. Has an internal thing. Actually, if we use this on the effect, I could show you it. It's called the mouth. I use this a lot when I was newer. I don't know why I liked it so much. Let's get something. Here's Spark. Or let me show you. Let's go for rounds. That's the craziness that the mouth does to it. Really, really fun to send a voice through. Let's delete this. And we've got all these really, really nifty synths in here. So again, these are sort of the ones I've shown you so far, are sort of like the classic ones. There's also this insane user library. So type in Reaktor user library into Google. Go to like the first thing, it's probably it. And this is the Reaktor user library. It is full of things other people have built. You can build your own synths in here and your own effects. So everything you just saw, you could build this. And it's friggin' nuts. And there's a lot of like quality stuff in here. I actually have like my own little library of things. But you can actually come in, you can browse things by like how many downloads and its ratings and whatnot. There are some really, really cool utilities added. And they even provide you with like some resources now to get going. It used to be like you just talk to the community. There's a very active community. Same for Kontakt building. Like there's a super active forum. You will meet the famous evil dragon. He's like on all the forums. This guy is a legend. If you see him, say hi. You'll see him if you look up any question. He'll probably be somewhere on there. On KVR too. Pretty much any forum. I don't know how he gets around so much. But anyways, that's all of these things. Now, okay, so this is just the first part. Okay, there's more. It's kind of crazy. So let's close this. Let's open another reactor. Actually, I want to show you one other thing. There are some third-party companies that are really, really cool. But there's one in particular I want to mention, and they made Polyplex. So let's just open up, we'll just open up this kick one. So this is Polyplex. They did this thing with like randomizing things. Like we could roll the dice, change the samples. And just a bunch of options in here. But they have a ton of other crazy ensembles inside of Reaktor that are very advanced. This is the one that ships with the native instrument stuff. But definitely worth checking out. There are other things. S-Layer, close cousin to Polyplex, is very, very similar. But is more focused on a like single sample production. Where this is like layers, treats it kind of more like an instrument. And I have videos comparing them in depth. But yeah, Twisted Tools is a cool one if you want to check out a company that makes some really cool things with this. Now, inside of Reaktor, if your product's so good that other companies exist out of your product, it just kind of says something about it. There's this whole Eurorack thing. So Reaktor, I guess, has always kind of had this aesthetic, but they've really just like pushed it. Like you basically have the full blown thing now, except the physical stuff. That's modular synthesis. So we're going to come in here. Yeah, blocks. You could come in and like load up different blocks. We can add blocks. And what you want to do is you click on this like graph looking thing, structure icon. You can hook things up, have them trigger. We have a play thing that can send out a clock, levels. I mean, there are some really, really crazy patches. I'm going to undersell blocks here and just kind of move on. But I want to point it out. It is crazy. A lot of people, this may be the thing you got it for. We'll go more into depth with some of this stuff in like another video. But you do get blocks, which is like an entire universe. You can make a whole track just in this alone. I do recommend, if you're going to roll with this, Potentially using it just in outside of FL or your DAW or whatever. Open it up in standalone. I find it's just a little easier to work with as far as windows and stuff go, but it's actually super pleasant in the DAW now too. They really made it look amazing. So anyways, some Euro rack potential here, really, really crazy. And then the last thing I want to do with you, just to show you how sort of insane Reaktor can get, is build. Now you click on build, here's build, and we're going to go to edit. And so you get this structure view and this view of your interface. And let's just make a simple like sine wave thing real quick, just sort of show you how it works. Now, this is true for FL. I don't know if it's true for other DAWs, but none of like delete doesn't work right now. But if I double click on something like I was going to type, it changes the keyboard focus to Reaktor. So now when I hit delete, it deletes it. And when I right click or hit enter, I can like search things. So there's all these like blocks you could build with. But let me just show you the basics. So you start out really basic. All those things I showed you earlier, like for example, Polyplex, we go into edit. And let's say, oh, I'm going to deconstruct what's in Polyplex. Like I'm going to learn what's in here. Well, I'm telling you right now. So you come in here, you go to Polyplex, you go down a layer. Here it is. Inside of this thing is what they use to build it. And then you got this, and it gets crazier the further you go down. Super advanced stuff. So we want to start out simple. You don't take calculus, multivariable calculus before you learn how to count. It's just not what you do. You learn to count first. So here, let's really quick take a second. Let me show you how to count just a little bit. So I'm going to use the quick search, but you could get all these things through the menus. But it would take forever if I started hunting through menus. So the first thing we're going to use an envelope generator. So this is an ADSR envelope. Now there's two levels to Reaktor. There's the primary level, and then there is the, I can't remember what the lower level is called. But there's the primary, and then there's like an even lower level, the macro core cell. Anyways, you open up this thing called a core cell, and you can work on like the sample level. You can build your own filters and implement like DSP algorithms like right there. So that's really, really cool. Like you can go down to like filter just before basically you're writing lines of code. And it's really, really great. Awesome thing I used in some of my classes actually for myself. I was taking some DSP courses, but we're going to use the primary level, which has basic modules built out for us. So here's an envelope. If we give it the right stuff. So we want an attack knob. So we right click, say create control. We'll automatically make controls that match match the ranges that these knobs would need to be. We're going to unlock our panel and just sort of drag and drop these things out. We want attack, decay, sustain, release, right? So we just, come on. There we go. And one more, release. Right. There we go. Cool. So we just lock that back up. Now when we move them, it'll change this. We need to tell it to play a note to send out an envelope signal. This is what the gate does. To do this, we are going to look up a MIDI gate because when a MIDI note happens, we want to trigger a gate. We could also use a button just to sort of, when we push it, sends out a note. But now when I push a note, it's going to trigger this gate. So now we have an envelope that will work. We need a synth, an oscillator. So let's use a sine wave, and we're going to use a sine oscillator. This is sine, the function sine. We're not going to use that. We're going to use the oscillator version because it's got a pitch input. And in core, that's what it's called. You have primary and you have core. In core, you would go in and actually like make your own oscillator and stuff. Really, really cool. But we're not doing that. So the amplitude we want to be guided by this envelope. So we say, okay, there you go. Boom, set up. Now for the pitch, we need to do conversion, but they have a module already done for us. We do MIDI pitch, MIDI note pitch in. This is going to do all that stuff for us. So we don't even need to worry about it. It's already going to send it out. And now we need to hook this up to the output. So we say, here you go, output, output. And now we have ourselves a sine wave that obeys our rules. Like if we have a decay, really no release. You have all sorts of algorithms in here They have if you go to where are the oscillators? There you are. All kinds of oscillators, even the weird ones. Really, really cool stuff. The non-periodic oscillators. So that's reactor building. I want to show you one more aspect of building. Inside of here, we could go to library, and we have a bunch of effects and things in here. For example, so these are like pre-built things we can link together. We could also grab other instruments from here. So if we went to like Monarch, and let's say we wanted to drag some of that stuff in here, we could go to, geez, it's been a while since I've done it this way. Just because I typically am not doing it this way. We could come in here and say, hey, let's grab, I can't remember the name. There's a sweet reverb that I really liked. Filters, studio effects. Yeah, okay. Just come over here, Monarch. We'll grab Monarch, drag it in. Here it is as a thing, and now it is going to, we could hook things up. So we could send these to the output. We'll need a summer if we're going to do this, though. Let me grab an effect. Let's go for molecular. Oh, it's loading. Give it a sec. Usually pretty snappy. Okay, so we see here's molecular. This is an effect, so it's going to take 2 inputs. So we could take our amazing sine wave that we've made, hook it up through molecular. We could also rearrange this so that this is on top, and it should have pushed the other one over to the back. There it is. There's our little sine wave. And we'll connect these up. Give ourselves some more looking room. And our sine wave suddenly has gotten crazy. Like, oops. Oh, I'm not even talking through that mic. So, yeah, really amazing building capabilities. I can't remember where the library tab is. I'm sorry about that. There's a whole bunch of really, really nifty effects. I just typically, if I'm working in Reaktor, I'm usually like building. I really like to build, or I'm using the player. I don't use blocks a ton, but it is like really, really crazy. I think it's because I like building. So anyways, really quick way to build a thing. Really fun stuff. Great stuff for experiments. Basically, endless VSTs. That's Reaktor. Now, hopping down the list, we have our sample content. I will show you just a smidge of it. So in my browser, I have it like connected. And if we go to like, or here, let me just load up XO. So here's XO. It's just a sample browsing plugin. It's an amazing sample browsing plugin. And I'm gonna change the rules for what it's allowed to load. I don't want the core content. So all the rest of this content's either Black Octopus or it's native instruments stuff. So most of this is NI stuff that you get. So there you go. That's your introduction to the sample content, okay? It is really, really nice stuff. Now, VSTs. There's a bunch. Let me just show you some of the big ones. So you have FM8, famous FM synthesizer. Very, very popular. Noisia uses this, if you know Noisia. I have a whole series on this. You have your expert tab. You're able to do your routing, change your ratios and whatnot on this. Really nice. You can go to the individual oscillators, change their envelopes, and all that good stuff. There you go. That's your introduction to FM8. There's a lot of these. So we got get moving. Oh, this is the new big one. Like people were very excited about this. This is Massive X. It kind of looks like Reaktor. Oh, we got a content update. I updated the presets. I guess we'll let this do its thing. And I kind of does that to you. We'll load up regular Massive. This is extremely famous. You should recognize this one. Skrillex made, he didn't make it popular by himself. Definitely had something to do with it though. Because he made a lot of his earlier stuff with just this. I also have a series on this. Actually, I think this might have been the first series that I did on my channel. This is old. So that's massive. One that you might not know, but is a fantastic synth is Absinthe 5. Very interesting synthesizer. It has some really unusual routing capabilities. Like just this notion and stuff in here is just like pretty extensive. And in the effects, they have some really, really cool effects. But the browsers and all these are pretty similar, so they're pretty easy to get a glimpse of what's in here. Go for some keys. And there's a ton of presets. Like if I take off the filter requirement, this is like, it just keeps going. Same with Massive. There's literally, if we go into the browser and you like, yeah, there you go. Look at this. This is insane. These are all, and there's so many preset packs for this. It's also ridiculous. And I actually really like the factory ones and the ones that they sell. And I believe you get those now with Massive. Like those are really, really, really great. Those are pretty high quality stuff. There's obviously amazing user stuff out there too. This is the newer version. Let's pick a different one. But you also have this. This is the one that I think everyone like pulls out now. That's into the newer stuff because this is like the latest and greatest from NI. Some really interesting takes on what a good synthesizer should be because they didn't necessarily go for the cleanest sound. They went for like a sound with character, if that makes any sense. Okay, so there's effects too. Let's go through some of the effects. I really like the reverbs. They're RC, they're made by Softtube, if I recall correctly. And yep, Softtube. I really like in here, they have a drum mix. These small space ones, I don't know what it is, but I really like them. Let's get like a hi-hat. And they always start out with the mix on. I mean off, it's 100% wet. I don't know why they do that, but you have this, the RC48. I use them both. I've experimented. In the RC48, there's actually a couple presets. Where's the bathroom one? It's in here, classic ambience. Bathroom is a classic ambience. I don't know why, but I really like these. I typically don't come here for like the longer ones, but you totally could. They're great sounding reverbs. No complaints there. Let's look at Supercharger GT and the solid bus compressor. There's also some EQs. I don't use the equalizers that much, but I do use the solid bus EQ a ton. Or not, solid bus compressor. I use this on my drums all the friggin' time. Awesome. Definitely check it out. Sounds really good. There is and the other one I really like is the GT Supercharger. Come on, where are you? Supercharger GT, okay? I had it in the wrong order. Give me a break. This thing, awesome. I used to put it on my mastering chains. I don't as much anymore. If I want some color, I will. And just put up the character a little bit. This thing can add some nice character to things though. As far as like, I really like what this does sometimes, along with saturation. The compressor, I actually don't use it for compression that much. I'm usually grabbing it for the character and the saturation knobs. But another one that I use a fair bit, definitely want to mention. There are the equalizers, and they do sound good. I don't even remember what they're called. We'll just go EQ. These are all my things with E in them, I guess. E45? Nope, that's not it at all. Anyways, there's equalizers and things. I use those less just because I have EQs that I like to grab. You got the Pro Q3, and I like the stock parametric EQ2 from FL. If you're a heavy user of those, let me know. They are knob-based, so they go for like more of a retro sort of approach to EQing, which is cool. But that, I know I'm missing things. I'm sure there's a bunch more. Someone's going to say, you didn't talk about this or that. But there's a pretty comprehensive look at getting started with some of this stuff, and hopefully it opens your mind to some of the things you could do. You could be a builder. You could program your own instruments, both sample-based and DSP-based. You could design filters and oscillators. You could be a songwriter, a composer. You could load up your sounds. Reaktor can act like a sampler for like, man, just come on. And then you have all the synthesis. You're a sound designer. Got tons of synthesizers. Reaktor's like just this endless pit of sound design. If you can't do it in Reaktor, you're trying to do something that's really, really dang new or something. But anyways, there it is. Now, I was going to try and make this short, but I just realized it's just not possible. There's too much in here. And I've still skipped a hilarious amount of things. In fact, one occurred to me that I definitely should mention, which is Complete Control. So this is a VST that NI makes. If you own their hardware, so I have like an S88 keyboard. It's a fancy keyboard with lights that match the color of the keys and their instruments. If you want that, your DAW either has to support deep integration, which a lot of DAWs still don't, or you use Complete Control. So here's Complete Control. I can control freaking everything from my keyboard. It's awesome. Putting in notes is not awesome, but everything else is awesome. And so I can load up like effects, including third-party stuff. Like, look at all this. This isn't NI stuff. And I'm able to just really, really quickly move. And they've recently, they put out an update that makes it a lot more CPU friendly. I've had an up and down relationship with their updates with their different plugins. So this is really, really great. If you have hardware, check out this plugin. It could be a game changer for you. If you ever think about buying hardware, keep in mind you've got Complete Control and that you could be taking advantage of that if you're a big hardware guy. I actually really like mouse and key, but I also like working off and just playing in things. So it's really nice not to have to look at the computer screen because you've got Complete Control taking care of all this stuff. So this is really, really great. It's just like been optimized to work with all their stuff, as well as any other plugin that will support it. And you can also make your own preset maps and stuff and add plugins. So fantastic device for interfacing. I also skipped battery. It's just a drum thing. They make a big deal out of this too. This was one that depending on the DAW I'm in, I find this more useful because they've got like the channel strip and a bunch of effects already routed in. I find it sort of a pain to route stuff to the mixer though. Yeah, but they do have their kits, which it's sometimes nice to just get a take on what samples are ready to go. A lot of times this also updates and it takes freaking forever to update for some reason. But you can route things out, like if you click and you go to output, you can send them out to individual buses or direct outs, sort of like Konttakt. That's kind of a pain. I like to work with things just like this. I don't know if you can. I've never tried. You can just, nope. Come on, let me do it. Nope. See, if you could drag and drop out of it, then I would use this a lot more. But I just don't because of all those reasons I just mentioned. Now you can write the MIDI in because each one of these pads corresponds to a MIDI note. But yeah, anyways, there's battery. Another great way to browse samples really quick, get sort of an idea of kits. If you have Machine, that's another big one that's like a big enabler with the product. So it's cool if you own Complete 12 and you have like the hardware, they integrate like really well. Really, really nice. Am I missing anything else? I'm totally missing other things. But am I missing anything else that's like a big deal? I don't think so. Let's look here. Complete. Those are the ones that I think are like pretty dang useful and important. Ones that I see all the time. Okay, I clicked on the one without the extra stuff. No. Oh, guitar rig. Didn't talk about that. I'm not really gonna, but it's basically an amp simulator. I don't know what it is. I don't play guitar, but I have friends who do, and none of them like it. I think it's great. But I don't play guitar, so I don't know what I'm talking about. I love to use this, though, for effects. And these are basically presets down here you can load. See, NI is always doing this garbage to me. This is the second time in one video, and this is a regular thing, too. It's not, like, uncommon. So if you see this, I'm sorry. I feel your pain. Can I do stuff with it? Wow, that's nifty. So, yeah, it's basically you can load up your effect stacks and whatever, get all your things sort of in order. It's also got some looper abilities and things. Really, really, really cool. I really like it. So there's that. I think it's just because there are other options that people tend to like more than this. But if you're a huge guitar rig fan, you know, lay out your case. Unless you, or I feel like I might get people who might just say, yeah, your friends are right. I don't know. I don't have a huge opinion about it. Maybe when I pick up guitar, I'll care more. If you have any questions about this, let me know. I know that was a lot of info, a lot of plugins, and you bought a very big, expensive thing. So, I mean, I'm still learning stuff. Like, it's so huge. It's insane. Subscribe and have a blessed day.